Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 28th of April. I'm Matt Duda from EBOSS, and I've just got a short presentation with regards to site protocols for both residential and commercial construction sites for architects and consultants. We've been asked many times over the last week or so questions around site access, do's and don'ts, so I thought I'd put this together for you based on the protocols that were announced about 10 days ago, covering both residential and commercial sites. So today the focus will be on the difference between the two, thinking about how and when you should think about accessing building sites now that level 3 has commenced. I'd also just want to touch on the supply chain as well. That may well impact on some of your involvement in the site and a small initiative that we have in place on EBOSS. Right, so before we get into the protocols, I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of the wider industry. Here I've just got a graph of the daily visits that we get to the EBOSS website. So many people ask us, how's the industry responded? What level of work is continuing? And so in here on the dark blue line, you'll see the actual traffic. These are visits to the EBOSS website on a daily basis. And you can see here as we started lockdown, oops, let's come back. As we started lockdown, we can see that the dark line was actually beneath a pre-COVID-19 average. We're expecting, we received traffic around 70% during that first week of lockdown compared to what we would normally see in a normal environment pre-COVID-19. As lockdown continued, we saw that those disruptions lessened. We got used to working remotely, and we can actually see that actually there's been a lot of activity over the last week and a half in preparation for level 3 starting. So once that confidence, we had a date and we were working towards that, you can see on some days we had nearly 4,000 visits to site, well in excess of what we had been seeing pre-COVID-19 days. And this is the last week, that preparation for going to level 3 today. All right, so there's two sets of protocols. I've got links to all documentation that I reference in this website in the show notes underneath the video, there for you to click on and get the latest version. Firstly, I'd like to just cover the residential protocols. The protocols in general are set up in 4 sections. So what should people be doing before they arrive on site? It covers both preparation of the site, coming into level 3, but also daily operations. Secondly, around how the site should be entered and the controls there, what can be done on site in terms of operations, and then how do we leave the site and pack the site down. So for this presentation, I really just want to focus on the role of managing visits, inspectors, architects, consultants to site. So when we look at residential sites, big focus on if it's not essential, don't allow access. So you really need to think about your purpose and communicate that clearly. You can't just expect to turn up and be granted immediate access. You'll need to go through the same process as anyone else on the site. So expect there to be a delay around induction. That can either be done remotely, so over the phone or video conferencing, or they may well have an app. You'll need to register, so a good tip to bring your own pen if that is paper-based, and be prepared to go through a wash and sanitizing station. Most sites should have running water and soap and towels, which we should expect as our main wash station procedure, but there may be hand sanitizer there instead. Big question is, should we be wearing gloves? So no gloves, as long as you go through that hand washing, you should be fine. Now, there's an expectation of maintaining social distancing, at least 2 meters apart for most visitors. If you are looking at more closer contact, you really need to limit the times. They talk to that limit of 15 minutes for anything closer. There's a real imperative to eliminate face-to-face meetings. And when you are interacting with people, a strong driver that it should be one-on-one. So don't expect to gather people around to address them all at once. You're encouraged not to touch anything unless absolutely necessary. That may be difficult in some circumstances for inspectors, or if you are in fact inspecting quality of work, or even the materials as they've come to site. So you need to be really careful about what footprint or fingerprints you're actually leaving and reducing them to an absolute minimum. And just think about delivery, so how materials actually get delivered. Just remember that the people on site do not have the ability under level 3 to go down to the store and conduct face-to-face with store staff. So everything they do is over the phone or online. Now, the suppliers who are servicing the sites, they need to have their own strict protocols in place to enable them to engage with active building sites. And they also need to understand what are the protocols of the site they're delivering to. So that needs to be clearly understood. Otherwise, we could have the case where deliveries may well be refused if there's no evidence that a plan is in place, or that the deliveries can't be delivered because they aren't convinced that there is a suitable level of protection or plan on the site they're delivering to. So if you're in a project management or observation role, just make sure that both parties clearly understand what is required to ensure successful delivery and supply to site. Now, the delivery driver needs to follow the same sign-in and same process as anyone else. They can't rely on physical documentation. So again, just another tip, if you're talking to suppliers, make sure that they are comfortable using photographic evidence of delivery. They're not expected to leave pieces of paper. They need to ensure social distancing. They should be well versed in that. And if they have got heavy product, big joinery sets, any 2+ person lifts, you should expect that the supplier has their own delivery team bubble, and they need to ensure that they don't impact on anyone else's safety and distance on site. So they will be expected to manage product onto site and in some cases installation. So again, that needs to be clearly identified beforehand, and it's very good for you to know that those procedures are in place before everyone turns up on site and starts looking at one another if they don't have a plan in place. Now, moving to commercial sites, so vertical construction, larger sites, so more complexity. First thing we should expect is that we have very graphical signs and information, really to ensure the protection of the staff on site. So lots of charts and posters like this one here, and restricted access. So should really only be 1 or 2 access sites, whether it's a residential or commercial site. We're looking at the same type of protocols having in place. So those 4 main sections, obviously just with the larger scale of commercial sites and the complexity, there is a little bit more information and process to go through, but practically the same structure. In terms of entry to site, main contractors will be limiting visitors apart from those that are essential. In fact, we've just heard today that many sites, there's a no consultants general policy. So you need to work closely with site managers if you're looking at handing over, or they've got key milestones coming up. Just don't expect to be able to go site and get that access confirmed quickly. So stay in constant contact. Just be mindful that there will be staggered start and finish times in an effort to reduce congestion and contact, particularly on those site access points. So just think about that when you are planning your visit. Expect there to be some delays because there'll be monitoring going on at access points just to ensure physical distancing is actually occurring. There may be new systems in place, things like fingerprint scanners, hearing are being used. So again, just make sure that you're prepared for new protocols. Obviously, you need to wash or clean hands. Again, we expect that to be soap and running water with hand towels, or could be sanitizer. Now, where possible, all main contractors will be conducting induction, either video conferencing or over the phone, rather than having this congestion at the access point. Now, again, just if you're involved in observation or project management, again, the supply chain delivery drivers should be well versed with their own protocols and the protocols of the site. It should be clear that an expectation that if the delivery deemed that they can stay in their vehicle and site staff can then unload, or if they are unloading, they obviously must wash or clean their hands before unloading goods. And whether you're a supplier, consultant, architect, if there's a group of you who are going to site, you need to make sure that one person does the recording as part of that entry process, rather than you all handling the material around, just to minimize the amount of engagement with those forms or screens if they've got a digital process. If you are conducting site meetings, only those who absolutely need to be there should attend. Need to choose your space carefully, either outdoors or somewhere well ventilated. Now that's could be problematic if it's a noisy site. So just think about what can actually be done remotely versus what actually requires you on site. If you are expecting people to come together, need to make sure that you're maintaining that social distance of 2 meters. Now, again, just thinking about the supply chain, because one of the big questions here is around scheduling. What work can be done on site with staggered start times and potentially a smaller workforce. So we could expect some delays or more time to be taken for each step to be completed, but also we need to ensure that we've got good coordination with the supply chain. So we're confident the product's going to be available and to site when we need it. And if there are any delays, they're communicated to the supplier so they're not, we don't get supply deliveries that are out of whack with the program. So just to give you a general sense, the building merchants had good levels of supply coming into lockdown. In fact, every year in preparation for the Chinese New Year, they take good levels of stock really to last them through until June. Now, we did have a late run on many SKUs leading up to lockdown. So we should expect this week, first week of level 3, that there will be some restocking required. In fact, it just takes some while for everyone to get their head around implementing their protocols, and just making sure they feel confident that they can execute as they should under the new restrictions. So not only will the supply chain be getting things in place, but we should also expect that majority of sites, and let's remember that this week we're bringing thousands of building sites back online. So there'll be plumbers everywhere making sure that running water is available. There'll be lots of checking on site, bringing it back up to speed in terms of weather tightness or any remedial work due to the site being abandoned for 5 weeks will have to be done first before they can proceed with the build program. Now, we've had a number of comments around a refocus on a domestic supply chain. So, for a clear understanding, we need communication from suppliers, what assurance they can give around the level of supply and the continuity. So we would expect those suppliers who have got good control around fabrication and manufacturing locally to give us some real confidence that we can rely on them rather than what we've done over the last few years, which has been heavily focused on importing a product. We also see that there's be a large requirement just to keep the industry updated on changes in that supply chain. So we'll be providing updates regularly just to give some confidence around that continuity. With that in mind, we had for level 3, we had I'll just go to full screen here. Right, so we had we've created a checklist for suppliers, and that really, we did that initially for level 4, and we've just completed that for level 3, and the objective here is to give you as architects and designers some confidence around the main suppliers. Are they fully operational, or are there any limitations in terms of supply, delivery, manufacturing, and also servicing? So what should we expect from suppliers under level 3 moving into level 2? So we'll put that together. Again, we'll have a link to that in the show notes underneath, and that can be something that you reference. And if you've got any comments or questions around that, please get in touch with me at EBOSS. And I'm just going to finish off the presentation here with my contact details. So if you've got any questions or comments around this presentation or the documentation, please feel free to get in touch. When we see new changes, we'll look to communicate them just to keep you updated. So I hope I wish you a healthy and successful return to level 3 wherever you are, and look forward to being in touch in the near future. Many thanks.